brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking host, the good old boys. Suds, Suds, Suds. It's time for more Suds.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to yet another outstanding, amazing, incredible Sud segment.
I think that was one adjective too many.
I think that was like 4.
You left out tremendous.
Tremendous. Thank you.
Stupendous.
Thank you, Reverend Mark.
Monumentous.
Hi. Hi.
Hey there.
You ready to drink, belch, and repeat?
Ready to...
Sure. In a Belgian-y kind of way. Yeah.
Oh, don't give it away.
No, I'm not giving anything away.
So, I am your hostess, good old Gal Julieanna. With me today at the table is the OG crew. No sound effects? Mr. Sound effects?
It's like a creaking, board of some kind.
I know, like something, really? Okay.
You got crickets?
There you go. That is the right sound effect for us. That is correct.
So, with me today at the table is good old boy Dave, Mr. Sound Effect.
I'm the dude.
Sound
so
effect.
that's what you call me, that or his dudeness or duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
Just not duty.
Wow.
Doo-doo.
One White Russian, table 6. Yes, correct. Yeah.
Right.
It's because the rug ties the room together. That's the reason why it works for you, Dave.
There you go.
That's it. That's it. Reverend Mark.
It's so good to be here.
So good to be anywhere.
Sounds like he was straining.
I know.
Oh, it's good to be here and now.
Here and now.
Here and now.
And El Jefe.
So the thing is that since Canadians have been, unlawfully protesting the fact that I continue to do this show, I like the fact that we're on
Banned once again.
a large number of Canadian radio stations now. So I like that. It's like the ultimate.
Sarcastic humor.
Yeah, right. Correct.
It's in your face, Canada. You take what we give you.
Please get a national sport that you're good at.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Really?
Dressing in denim. I mean,
I didn't say
pretty
those
good at
people
that.
in Chicago should get a real sport. I said the people in Canada should.
People in Chicago
They
should get a real
invented
life.
the real sport.
Well,
Yeah, and then everybody else got
but
better
we
at
own
it.
it.
Called Murica.
America.
That's right.
I beg to differ.
Really?
I beg to differ.
Yeah, how many years has the Stanley Cup been won by the Canadian NHL teams? Like 3.
No, more
So
than 3.
What sport was that again? Was it curling?
Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about.
Pairs, figure skating.
Okay, you're both banned. You're all banned.
Like
God.
milking cows or,
Let me go get you my hockey stick, okay?
Okay.
Let me just get the hockey
right,
stick. Okay. Reeling it back in.
Yeah.
So we do different kinds of suds segments and brewery takeovers.
Mostly poor.
And style shows and blind tastings and price point shows and questionable decision shows and things like that.
That's for sure.
Aren't they all questionable decisions?
Well, with
It's
who
part
I
of our
work with, yeah.
It's a part of our
but-
creative process. That sounds kind of questionable.
Yeah.
We're in.
Let's let Dave pick a show.
Yeah, well,
That Dave's a real...
dork.
Oh, wait, I'm Dave. Never mind. I'm great.
But sometimes when we're out beer shopping, we just find a really cool like mixed 6-pack or multi-pack, and we have to get the good old boys over here to talk about it. So the good old boys are here.
We got the oldest of the good old boys.
Yeah. So recently, good old boy Dave and I picked up a set of Belgian specialty ales from Petrus, one of the brands brewed by de Brabandere Brewery in Belgium. Belgium.
Baba Ganoush.
Please forgive me. We'll find out more about them in just a minute. But first, the SUDS segment is brought to you by...
Are you lonely? Have you tried meeting people who interest you, but you just can't find any? Have all the dating apps let you down? Maybe you need Imaginary Friend. It's the new social app that lets you avoid real relationships. No chance of being disappointed because it's all in your head. That's Imaginary Friend. Available for download absolutely nowhere.
A few years ago, at the Beer Now conference, good old boy Dave, good old boy Kendall, and I took a part in a blending demonstration with one of the master brewers,
Yves Benoit.
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 They actually made a sour power pack that contains bottles of their aged pale, aged red, and oud Bruin that you can blend yourself.
They also call it the Rude Bruin now.
Oh, really?
They do.
Okay.
It's on their website.
Okay.
I will look it up right here in front of you.
And it was a lot of fun, and the beers were delicious, and you were able to just, experiment. It was like being a master blender.
Except we weren't very good at it.
But Petrus makes a lot of beers.
But Petrus makes a lot of beers, and we've got 6 that we are really excited about.
As soon as Dave finds his piece of
That's
paper.
right. Yeah. As soon as
wrote
we
this?
focus.
Yeah, I agree. Who wrote this?
I was so enraptured by what you were saying.
The timing is just so stellar.
Impeccable.
Way
It's
to go.
impeccable.
Get ready to
All
number
right.
1 again, Dave.
Hey, little boy Dave, you want to talk about today's flight?
Not really, because you guys are jerks.
Yep. I got 1750 is going to screw up one of these.
The
I got
Petrus
20.
Belgian specialty ales we'll be tasting and discussing today are the Oud Bruin, also known as
Pretty good.
also known as the Rude Bruin, the Golden Tripel, the Double Bruin, the Speciale, the Blond, and the Aged Red.
Is that Modelo?
Yep. So we are laughing because Dave had so many typos in that list. First off, he typed Golden, Gouden.
Okay, look at the bottle.
How could
Look
you
at the bottle, Jack Wagon.
Yeah,
Look at it.
Gouden.
It's like Gouden dank.
Which is Dutch for golden. So bite me.
All right. So
Okay,
all right.
what's the next one?
Speciale.
Yeah, what's it said on the bottle? What's it said on the bottle?
Let's see here. Let's see around here.
IALE.
Yep. So yeah,
Okay.
that one was not even close. So yeah,
Whatever, dude.
yeah.
Save yourself.
Speichel is how he spelled it. All
Yeah.
right.
That's C before E.
Right.
Except after D.
Or if you're in Canada, and then you just say screw it.
You know what? You're all number 1.
That's what we're living for.
picking on me?
All right. Well, thank you.
Terrible co-host.
Thank you. You're tremendous. Thank you.
Well, that's what.
Yeah. Reverend Mark, would you mind giving us the ratings for this SUDS episode?
And
Oh,
read them like a disgruntled
Yeah,
Belgian.
and can we really score them this low? Is there a -0 category here? Just kidding. Just kidding. Okay. These SUDS ratings are as follows. We will be discussing and fussing about these ratings
And the
Talk into
beers
the
that
mic.
go with the ratings.
and along with the ratings go our signature belching and other artificial sounds. here they are. Number 1. Man, that sucks. Give me anything but a bud.
Or a mic.
Ooh. Okay, number 2. Was that a belch?
Or a mic.
Number 3. What a relief.
It's not Mike.
And number 4. You know, a body really shouldn't make that kind of sound.
Except Mike.
And number 5. Hey, man, listen to that hang time. Give me another.
Thing that's not Mike.
Thank you, Reverend Mark.
You were
And for
great.
those just tuning in,
Yes.
this is Mean Boys, take 1.
Dave versus Mike, episode 3000.
Oh, boy. All right, let's get to the beers.
I have
Let's
a
just-
weapon, though, see. So he gave me the screwdriver earlier. So,
Yes.
I can stab him with a
You know,
flat blade.
Considering this beer flight, I wish I had a screwdriver right now.
I'm feeling
Okay.
screwed.
Okay. Come on, ladies. Okay, so we have got 6 beers here.
Is that true?
Yep, that is
Is
true.
that using Canadian math?
Belgian math?
Belgian math.
Belgian math,
Okay,
right?
all right.
Belgian beers, Belgian
How
math.
many
Yeah,
frites would we have if we...
I think with today's flight there would be many frites. Many frites.
And some mussels.
Some mussels, sure. What else would go with these beers today?
Yeah, I'll order another beer. I think that's probably what would go with this
Yeah, a
flight
different
best.
beer. That
Yeah.
would
I
be
think a
good.
little Gargonzola would go with some of this.
Ooh.
So we wouldn't.
Because Mike's jokes are so cheesy.
And I know that Dave would misspell Gargonzola.
Wow. We're going to be back with the beer in just a minute.
Mike gave himself a standing ovation.
Welcome back, everyone. So, for those of you just tuning in, hi, welcome. What took you so long?
I like the people that
Why are
have
you
come
still
back
here?
of their own free will, All 8.5 of those people said, sure,
8.5?
I'll listen to the rest. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I promise it's going to get better because now we're going to get into the beer.
Those are the same people that cut their own arms. Like,
So, we are doing a mixed pack takeover from Petrus.
which I think we should talk really quick about mix packs. They can be a great thing. Like if you want to get to know a brewery, you want to understand like some of their beers without buying, a bunch of 6-packs of different beers. Buy a mix pack. That way you get to taste it.
Yeah.
But with like anything else, you might run into something that is sat in a store for many, many years or months or not been stored appropriately or different things.
Yes,
Yeah.
a mix pack runs that risk because not everybody wants to buy 6 different beers in one package. So, yeah, it sits around a lot longer.
Which is weird to me because like I'm more about trying a lot of different beers, but some people they know like I like this one beer from a brewery, so I'm gonna just keep buying it over and over
Right.
and over. Whereas like I would probably want to try several different ones.
So part of what I like about this discussion we're having today is talking a little bit about, the beer distribution process that, a lot of people may not be aware of and how this has some direct correlation, in the quality, of the beers that you have as well. So you may not know that, these beers actually moved from Belgium to the U.S. through an importer, and then that gets hand off to usually a regional distribution point, and then that moves down into the states or the
Retail,
local,
yeah.
retailers, from that point. So about 4 or 5 handoffs, not unusual. And one of the things that's very true with most beers is they move around at ambient temperature. They're not in a temperature controlled
Right.
environment. That does happen. And there are some beers, where, things are stored and made and transported around, at temperature, but the vast majority of the beer moves around even at, just ambient temperature for whatever distribution point that it's moving around. The other thing that we were talking about is just the labeling itself, and one of the conversations that we'll talk about today is how long was that sitting on the shelf?
Mm-hmm.
And the difference, at least in the U.S. market, is that beers are not don't have an expiration date on them. Now, a lot of them don't even have a born-on date on them. The regulating authority for doing that is actually the TTB, which is about collecting tax from alcohol and not necessarily overseeing the quality matching up with the beer. So,
which is crazy. That is not the FDA or whatever.
Literally in the U.S., you could have a beer that's labeled as a red ale and drop a blonde in it, a blonde ale, and as long as it was at the same ABV, so if you got the label approved and it was 8% ABV, and you said, that was it. If it says blonde and you dropped a red ale in there and it was still at 8%, boom, you're good to go.
Yeah, and it's crazy, man, because, beer is not like other alcohol, right? It's way more perishable than
a lot of things that get a expiration date. Yeah, that's actually managed by the FDA in the U.S. market. So that's part of what you're going to hear come into our conversation is some net effect that all of this distribution and regulation, and then you as a beer consumer specifically, how it's kind of impacting your experience. So let's rip in to talk about the Oud Bruin.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the first beer up for bids is the Petrus Oud Bruin.
Up for bid. I bid -5.
It's a blend of 33% Petrus aged pale, pure barrel aged beer that has been aged for 2 years in oak, and then 67% of a young brown beer. In this blend, the young dark contributes the reddish brown color, and the aged pale contributes the slightly sour flavor. Petrus Oud Bruin is a typical Flemish red ale as tradition dictates.
A lot of Oud Bruins I've had are like jaw clenchers, right?
Yes.
Like they're very acidic. And as they get older, they can kind of become more
figgy and raisin.
Yeah. This one's really kind of a watery.
Yep.
Little weird version of it.
But I would say also that Oud Bruins are a little less sour and puckering than like an Eastland, like a Flanders, like an East Flanders.
Sure.
That is, there is a little bit more malt there too, and which is implied by the brown that it's blended with supposedly. But I go, with Dave and Mike both, is that I think it's just thin. It's just this particular one is way too. The brown ale part of it is just not there.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really fallen off the cliff. And the only thing that's left is kind of this citrus sour, kind of overtone, to this. And we've tasted this beer, in a lot of other instances. And this beer is maybe a third of what, I would even describe it as. And, part of what you'll hear is speculate is how long did that mix pack, sit on the shelf. I'm going to lead in and say it probably sat there a good 10 years, Yeah,
it's hard to even say.
I have no idea. To us, it's only been a few months old, but in the grand scheme of things, sure. It could have been for a while.
And a lot of that comes down to individual retailers and their distributors on, do they care about, because, like once something's been ordered and
paid for,
shipped and everything,
and
invoiced. Like, I'm going to sell this damn thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if some dude from Nashville's dumb enough to come in here and buy this thing and, check it out, knowing that Petrus is a great brand, I think that's the thing too, is like, we all know that Petrus makes phenomenal beers, but when they're mistreated or something, maybe they can't hold up. Or
what can you expect of a beer to hold up over
however many years, or
and just the logistics that's implied by bringing products all the way over from Belgium and not moving them quickly.
because that's a lot of miles and a lot of movement.
Yeah, I would go so far to say this mixed six pack was a failure in merchandising. So
Yeah.
this is just, as Dave was kind of moving down through that point of thought process and discussion, is the distributor sold it, the retailer bought it, they stuck it on a shelf. As far as they're concerned, their job was done.
Yeah.
And at least in this particular market where this was purchased, beer and liquor and is sold, in the same, side by side. And then that changes in different markets, and some beers like this are sold in a grocery store setting where, that aspect of merchandising is actually a responsibility of the distributor, and they want to look at, having, fresh or, products that will actually move and sell, that moves back on the responsibility of the distributor, not of the retailer. So
Sure.
I really think this is, I think as you hear us walk through this discussion of this mixed six pack, I think this is a flat out failure of effective merchandising. They just simply didn't recognize they had a spent product on the shelf.
And then I got a weird question for you. So back in the day when Petrus started distributing here to the United States, there weren't as many breweries here in the United States
exactly.
as
That's
there are
true,
now.
yeah.
So
That's
when
right.
they were sitting on the shelf, they were probably moving a lot faster
Yes.
because when I, many thousands of years ago, started drinking beer, I remember being really jazzed about this because, hey, it was fancy because it was coming from overseas and it wasn't Rolling Rock. And I had a fair share of this just based on, hey, I'm doing something that's culturally great for me and my belly. But there weren't any other options. Now there are a lot of local options that are very similar that want to take this approach. And then also now in this current environment that we're in, where distribution is being lax because it's sitting at the docks longer, because it's waiting for certain regulations, which, are all changing. I'm just wondering if six packs are even going to go away, in favor of like singles, because the singles will move faster than, six packs.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
We've seen that too, even with like bombers going away. Like the bigger,
Very true.
the bigger size containers are being replaced by, like 500 mils or 375s, partly because the breweries, can package them a little better, but also a lot of beers, people aren't buying the bigger formats just because they want to drink a beer now. They just want to drink it and be done with it. That it's not necessarily, I'm going to take it to a party and share it with 5 or 6 people. I'm just going to drink this thing.
And I'd say it also represents, not just the coming of age, they've come of age, but they're maturing and liking really good beer is the millennials. And that there's just a desire environmentally for smaller packaging.
Yeah.
And not investing in a big bomber. And so that's,
well, I think cans too.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think more and more things are going to be in cans because you don't have the things getting light struck. There's a little less oxidation going on. So you can, and it's a little more compact, and you can take it places that you can't take glass.
That's a good move to our next beer
Yeah.
when you talk
True.
about light blighted.
Well, so the Oud Bruin from Petrus rated a 3.
So even as damaged as it was, we still recognize that it was a pretty good beer.
Sure. Although a very fresh version of this would be
A
outstanding.
lot better.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Freaking phenomenal.
Moving on, let's talk about the Gouden Tripel. Top fermented blonde beer, re-fermented in the bottle, brewed with pure spring water and carefully selected hops and malts. The ultimate proof of the master brewer's craftsmanship. 7.5% ABV.
It's malty.
yeah.
Yeah, I thought part of it was I wrote down clean, good, not great. It's just oxidized. It's just horrible. You can tell, that this beer is long gone.
Yeah, I picked that up too.
It's expired and gone to see its maker.
That's a very good way of putting it. Yes.
I'd also say that, it hit all the right notes if you like a particular kind of triple. But for me, what distinguishes a triple from like a strong golden is that it's less sweet. And so this one is leaning more toward
sweet.
Yeah. More toward
super sweet.
Yeah, golden.
Yeah.
And a golden that's been slightly oxidized. So it's not my kind of triple. It still, I think, obviously qualifies. And it's not bad, but it's just to me not great.
And it's in an amber glass bottle. So if it's oxidized, that means it's been sitting there for a while.
Do you think that if they used an English rendition of describing golden instead of Dutch, that it would made a difference? Well, if you didn't catch that earlier, the Dutch version is Gouden instead of Golden.
The Dutch.
So
Yes.
would it made a big difference?
Maybe, that put the L instead of the U.
Yeah, I think it made
good.
a big difference.
I think so.
Kind of like can art.
And also, Reverend Mark, isn't it true you're in a traditional triple? You should be getting a lot more aromatics too.
I think so. I mean,
Totally.
I like slightly dry and spicy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and with some and you use aromatic malt in a triple, whereas you wouldn't so much in a golden. So I'm not getting aromatics there either.
Yeah, it's like everything has fallen off.
Yeah.
Start in your general direction. Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberry.
You said aromatics, so that made me think of that.
Yes.
Well, one of the things I think it's interesting, I remember, buying actually the Petrus, triple alongside, Carmelie at the same time. And, those are just a lot of reference standard, triple ales, that and Reverend Mark's. And, so I really know what this can be and what it tasted like. And probably if I went back through our back catalog, we probably had this and, we've rated it on the show previously. And this is just one of these things. It's like, wow, this sat, in a warehouse, for 8 months and, it got cooked at 120 degrees and then it moved to being set, and this cannot be light blighted because actually this mixed six pack was actually in a cardboard,
sealed in a cardboard.
On top of that.
And here's the thing too, Mike, is like, it reminds me like when we did the St. Bernardus.
Yeah,
episode,
there you go.
And some of that beer had sat in a store for months or years beyond when it should have, and they just let it sit. And like an unsuspecting numbskull like me comes by and buys it, just looking at the brand and not thinking about checking for dates, which you don't always see.
And there was no date on this pack.
Right. So there's no way to know. But at the same, but I think that's what's happening with Belgian beers in general, is because people aren't buying them as much. Kind of to Juliana's earlier point, there weren't as many breweries before, but now there's a lot of American breweries that are brewing pretty good Belgian style beers.
Right.
And people don't care as much about, I want to buy an authentic Chimay or a St. Bernardus or whatever. I just want to buy this triple or, whatever. And whatever I know is fresh.
Right. Yeah. And you think about it. I mean, aside from the ingredients themselves, which you can all source now locally from Belgium and wherever else.
Yeah.
Is, the water, and that is, where's the water sourced? Pierre Celis many years ago, came from Belgium, established Celis Brewery in Austin, Texas. And he said it was because the water was just like Brussels. And he said, so why not do it in Austin and distribute it close by than to
Where
bring
the
it in?
biggest market
Sure.
is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think it's because, there's more really, really good, authentically made Belgian beer. Just
Locally.
Domestically,
Yeah.
you don't need to
Which
buy.
is crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy to say, but it really is true.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so it's nothing against Petrus as much as it just has to spend a lot of time getting to us, and it's not worth it when it gets here, where it would have been worth it had we been there.
Or I think that if they at least
Where it came from.
Yes.
You know, or the point is that if you took the same measure and care, you know, with this perishable product,
Right.
to move it from point A to point B, even if you weren't moving it at temperature, even if you moved it quickly,
Yeah.
you know, I think that you would still be able to have shelf life that I think honored the quality of the beer as it left, you know, the brewery.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure. Because I think, I mean, as a home brewer, I want to have reference standards. And Petrus, you know, is a reference standard in terms of like a traditional Belgian beer. I guess if there was a way where we didn't have so many that were on the shelves and that we knew that the turnover rate was, you know, better on it, as a home brewer, I would like to have this reference standard. So when I can compare it, you know, in terms of style guidelines, then I have this to base, you know, what I'm going to do with my recipe.
Yeah,
and
it
how
is
to
a
tweak.
it is a benchmark.
You know, there's a fine line there.
Well, or Mike's just going to have to take us all to Belgium.
Well, I'm all right with that. I mean,
that's just, you know what? I think that'll just
After we've insulted their beer on this episode,
Yeah.
I'm sure they've just rolled out the red carpet.
And once again.
So-
they'll be waiting for us. Well, we will continue in just a brief minute. Welcome back, everyone. So today's episode is really interesting. It's talking about Petrus beer from Belgium, and we grabbed a 6-pack, and we're now discussing those beers. So it's kind of a brewery takeover, kind of.
It's a mixed 6 takeover.
Mixed 6 takeover. So the last beer that we have been talking about is the Gouden Tripel, and we rated that one a 3 just to make sure that we're catching up on that. And now we're going to move to the Dubbel.
The Dubbel.
Yes, double brown ale, top fermented dark beer, brewed with pure spring water and carefully selected hops and malts. The dark beer, with its subtle and slightly caramelized flavor, is preferably served cold. Mm-hmm. It is dark.
This one is okay to me. It's definitely, I definitely get caramel.
Yeah.
Kind of a cola flavor.
That's what I dinged it on. I mean, for me, I don't like a caramelly aspect to a Dubbel. I know, like, you have caramunic in there, maybe a little bit.
You want the spicier parts, though.
Yeah, it's just kind of.
It fell off.
There was a little bit
It's
kind
all
of
that was
on the,
left.
you know, it made it just, the sweetness made it just a little like a Pepsi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say this
That's
is
a really good
practically just
description.
sugar water,
Yeah.
you know, at this point. And, you know, it's basically a Tootsie Roll flavored sugar water. Yeah.
It takes all the things that make a great Dubbel or double or whatever and kind of pushes those to the side and just leaves you with the base.
Yeah.
You know.
And this is one of the, actually all these, you know, so far the beers, they have really fallen off, as they have sat here in the glass for, you know, probably 30 minutes. So, I'm really finding us being rather generous.
So are we
with our
telling people
ratings.
to just not buy imported beer?
No, I don't think that's the storyline, you know, here. That thing is that I think you have to challenge and look at the retailer and the packaging to be able to give you an informed decision specifically about, you know, what you're doing. Are there beers that are imported that do have born on dates? Yes, there are. Are there beers that have vintage declarations when you purchase them? Yes, there are. But when you're running into a product that you're not really quite sure, ask the retailer, you know?
Well, and if you buy something and it sucks, call them out on it too.
So that was kind of my question, Dave. You know, I mean, would you have taken this back if we weren't talking about it on the show? To the retailer?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
You know, and actually when we did the St. Bernardus thing, I posted an Instagram and called the retailer out on a really old 4-pack or whatever it was of one of their beers, and they pulled all the rest of it off the shelf. You know? So they do listen, they do watch, you know. They're gonna do what they're gonna do until somebody
says, "Hey,
hey man."
Yeah, and whose responsibility is that? I mean, would distributors stock the stores, would they want to rotate stock?
No, they don't stock. Well, so in this particular case, it's a package store. So they do not merchandise usually in package stores.
They just drop it and go.
They walk in with a hand truck and they drop it off. And the retailer is the one that, basically merchandises, from that point.
But the retailer needs to be the ones who either do what they have to do to get it off the shelf in a timely fashion, or go back to their distributor and say, no, you need to come get this, or we got to figure something out.
Yeah. So I think part of it comes down to an experiential, element of, with that retailer. Are they used to managing and merchandising products that are perishable? And with, other products like spirits and whiskeys and vodka and gin, right alongside this, the stuff sit on the shelf for, 1,000 years and it's going to be the same, This beer has definitely
this is a lot
life,
different. Sure.
Yeah. So
Sure.
to treat every bottle the same in your store is, just a revenue stream, and say, I don't have any merchandising, approach, to some of those things any different.
When I think with a lot of beer too, especially like macro beers, when they drop it off in the retailer, they stick it back in the cooler and everything stays cold for a long, long time. And,
So they feel like that's going to be better.
but when you have like craft beer stores and stuff, a lot of things are out where it's at room temperature and it's sitting under the lights. Like I've gone into beer stores and you see like things in green bottles, which if you don't know, green bottles,
It's skunk beer.
skunk
it doesn't
really
doesn't
fast.
filter out the
It's basically
the
the
UV.
It's basically the same as clear bottles, but they'll be sitting out on shelves, like right by the window
Yep.
and stuff. And it's like, dude, you're killing this beer.
And one more quick thing to note is if you're going to a package store and you see that they have like a sale section, I'm going to take more credence in a package store that does that because they realize that there are expiration dates on beers.
Let's get this out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'd say also just think about yourself in relation to your favorite package store or stores after the holidays, let's say 2 and 3 and 4 months after the holidays. And there's still certain kinds of seasonal beer that's left.
Yeah.
You don't buy it typically.
No,
Why?
you
Because
don't.
it's April.
If you see an Oktoberfest beer on the shelf in March,
Just pass it
let's
on.
think about
Yeah,
that.
just
But you
go
can't
past it.
know that about these products as
Right.
easily.
This is
That's
a little
the point.
tougher.
Yeah.
This is a little tougher. Well, the Dubbel we rated a 3.
So imagine how good these beers would be if they were
I know
fresh.
if they were. Okay, so let's move on to the Petrus Speciale. It's an amber. It's a don't go Mexican on me there. It's an amber colored top fermented
That
beer
was rude.
brewed according to an old traditional recipe. It's tasty, it's mellow, and you can carry on drinking. That's good vernacular there.
Well, when you drink, you start to carry on.
Oh, sure.
So burnt caramel. That's all I got really out of this.
This is one of the ones where I really noticed the poo.
Ooh, poo!
So
you
we
gave me
haven't-
a clean one, so
Yeah.
I didn't.
So we haven't talked about all the floaties that's in this as well.
I made
it
an
was
effort to
chunky.
I made an effort to give Mike and Mark the least poo.
So if you don't know, as beer is bottle conditioned, yeast can clump together and basically settle, in the bottom, same way that happens in a fermentation tank.
Yep.
And you're pulling that off usually, or filtering it out is more the case usually as it's being bottled. But, something sits there for long enough, it's going to clump up and settle once again. So
Well, yeah, and even when beer is bottle conditioned, it doesn't always leave a 1-inch layer of poop in the bottom of the bottle.
That's true, and I think it has to do with how much secondary fermentation went on.
Yeah.
It also is like beers are not always very well. I mean, they're not filtered, and so there could be trub in there too. Proteins. So it's a number of things, and that's the risk you take with bottle conditioned beers,
And
which usually is not it's a good thing, but
you decant off, like 80% of the bottle and it's pretty clear. You leave that last little bit. And potentially, if you're a home brewer or something, you take what's in the bottom, you propagate it up, and you brew a clone.
I don't think there'd be any.
No, there's nothing.
Yeah.
No.
There's no live yeast.
These are
in
all
this.
dead.
This is just duty.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything viable in here. So the Petrus Speciale, we rated a 3, though mine was like 4 fingers full of poo.
You won the prize.
See,
I
mine
did.
was
I won
really
the prize.
clean. I think I might have gotten the first pour.
So
Maybe.
it's very
Yeah.
sweet. It's a very sweet beer.
Yeah.
The Blond.
Okay, let's go to the Blond.
This is the darkest blonde beer I've ever seen in my life.
It's a refreshing blonde beer that leaves your taste buds craving for more.
Ned.
It is brewed from the finest aromatic hops, which gives it a refreshing and enjoyable taste.
I've got like half of those hops in my
I can
glass.
smell something, but you don't want to know what it is. So
Yeah, this one has a decent amount of poo in it as
So
well.
I'm chewing it.
this was just horrible.
Yeah.
You know, if there is such a thing as an aged blonde, then this was coming close to it.
The one redeeming quality of clear bottles is like if this bottle was clear, we would have been able to see like a good solid, probably 2 inches of doo-doo in the bottom of it.
It was just not even remotely close to, being, it was just sweet on the nose with a sweet finish and just another rendition of, this is a half step above, like cola water.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
And this was high on the oxidation scale for me, too.
I didn't even get that far. Dude, I mean, honestly, between the chewiness and, sucking the crap out between my teeth that came from the bottom of the glass, I don't know.
So,
This one was
okay,
hard.
so it's
This was
safe to
tough.
say that this one wasn't perfect, but in a perfect world, a Belgian blonde is a really good beer.
It is.
Oh yeah, this is we've had the Petrus Blonde several times over. This is a great beer.
So when I sip
just
this,
not
just-
in this 6-pack.
Just barely tip the glass and just get liquid in, it's still pretty tasty.
Yeah.
It's like sweet cereal malt. It's got a nice body to it. The there's a little bit of sugary sweetness to it, of course. It's definitely got some good characteristics.
Well, and
to it.
I took my notes when it was first cracked and it was still cool,
Yeah.
fairly cold. And I thought, kind of almost a quaffing beer, but I wouldn't quaff this stuff as it has aged or as it has warmed up.
Yeah.
It's way too sweet, and it's not just the malt.
All right, I'm going to do it.
Whoa!
Oh,
Okay, that was gross.
Oh, I drank it with all the poo.
You're gonna
and
feel
everything.
that later,
yeah.
girl. Okay, that's just glad this is not a video show. That's all it's just saying.
Okay.
You can go throw up on your garden. It'd be good fertilizer.
Okay.
Thank you.
That was a
Reverend Mark.
questionable
That was
decision.
awesome. Okay. That was a questionable decision. So the Petrus Blonde, we rated a 2.
Yeah, that's still being very
A
generous.
number 2.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a question to throw out to you guys. Have you ever sent a beer back, either at a restaurant or bar setting, or have you
Oh,
ever
yeah.
taken one back to a retailer? And
Yes.
What was do you remember what was wrong with it and why?
I've
than it-
had a few, not a few, but I've actually gotten the wrong beer.
Well, that happens a lot. Yeah.
You know, like you tell the server, "Hey, I want
this hazy IPA, and they
right.
bring you this super clear thing, and it tastes just like Bud Light. And
Yeah.
you go, yeah, no.
this looks like a stout. I'm pretty sure it's not a hazy IPA." Or you can tell the beer lines were dirty. You know,
That's probably the one thing I've done quite a bit is I can tell that they haven't cleaned the beer lines out in forever, and they've run stouts and sour beers and, all kinds of IPA through there, and it tastes like a muddled mess. And yeah,
I've even had where, you can tell the end of the keg blue and there's stuff in there.
yeah.
And you're like, dude, did you not see this on the way? You know,
As you were pouring it, yeah.
Right, or whoever was pouring it, and then you brought it out here, and you think I'm not going to call you on the half inch of stuff floating around here.
So you're saying it's okay to send something back if something is wrong?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
And it should be,
and
right?
you should be able to take it back to the beer store. If something's wrong.
There are a lot of people that I eat with, and they're like, "Oh, you only do that if it's wine and if it's spent." And I go, "Well, no."
No.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
I've had two instances. One where a bottle was brought to me, right? And they cracked it open and there was no effervescence. I'm like, no, back.
This beer's not supposed to be still.
And right, exactly. I mean,
Or no CO2, I'm done.
no. And it turns out that it was skunked because the person said to me, well, do you sure you want to, I'm sure it's great. I'm like, no, let me smell it. And it smelled like skunk. I'm like, no, thank you. Then I had another where the bottle was brought to me and it had dust on it.
Yeah.
They didn't even wipe off the dust.
And it wasn't a cellar beer.
No, it wasn't a cellar beer.
Not good.
No, as a matter of fact, it was a stout, but it was supposed to be like a nitrous stout.
No.
And I said no. And, they looked at me like I had three heads, but I'm like, no.
Well, and a lot of people are, people don't want to be confrontational, but the thing is, if you're going to be paying for something and usually paying quite a bit, it better be what you expect it to be.
Yeah. And it's not unusual in these days to ask for sample pours if it's in a tap situation.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Yep.
Okay, well, let's move on to the last one here, which is the aged red. So it's a perfect balance between sweet and sour. It is a 15% aged pale with an 85% Dubbel infused with natural cherries.
I love this beer.
As opposed to unnatural cherries.
He
I
liked
like
it because
cherries.
it had cherries in it. That's why
I like it. I like cherries, baby.
Other than that, it was a crappy beer.
Cough syrup? Anyone?
Robitussin.
No. Well, what did we rate this beer that I love so much?
We rated this a 3, though in a perfect universe, this beer,
Oh, it could have
is
been
a
5.
really good beer. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it can be a 5.
Yeah.
So the moral of the story for today is
Check your dates.
check your dates, check for dust,
Don't be afraid to take it back. If
and
it
don't
sucks.
be afraid to take it back.
Kick somebody right in the.
Exactly.
Keister.
If you're going to a place that is a reputable beer package store or beer-based restaurant, they should know better.
There you go.
That's the moral of the story. Well, that's going to end it for today. Thank you so much for joining us and hanging out with us. You can always find us where you found this episode, as well as radio, satellite, online at Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Beanpod, Podbean, and nearly any place you listen to a podcast. The easiest way to find this show on your phone is to ask Alexa, Siri, or Google, either in female or male verses, play podcast, Sip, Suds, and Smokes.
We love your feedback, and you can reach us online at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com.
Our daily tasting notes flow out on Twitter and Instagram every day. Our handle is at SipSudSmokes, and our Facebook page is always buzzing with lots of news.
And please take the time to rate this episode if you're listening online.
5-star.
Good old boy Dave, you know what time it is.
Time to get ill, son.
Okay. Is that your way of saying goodbye?
Oh, goodbye.
Reverend Mark, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Good old boy Mike.
Hey, thanks for joining us here on Sip, Suds, and Smokes. Come back, join us for another exciting episode. I will ask you to keep on sipping. Don't do it.
This is good old Gal Julieanna. Thank you so much for listening to us. And we love you and appreciate you. And keep on chuggling. Catch you next time.
Stay safe.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sips, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see you all next time.